come with your questions. And please come with your questions. Let's make this interactive. If you need us to stop and review something, let us know. But we really appreciate your time and your partnership today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Lauren. For the Landmark team, my name is Michael Mankoff. I'm a director over the customer success group for RealPage. And I've been working with Judy and the Landmark team, it seems like for a while now, which has been awesome and a pleasure. But also, when I want to give a quick background on why this product means so much to me personally. I joined RealPage via acquisition and I was actually employee number 5 of ILM. It's been through a few different name changes since then, but we were a small Boulder-based startup in Colorado 6.5, 7 years ago. And I was lucky enough to join this group and be able to watch this product morph into, basically the centralized leasing system of the RealPage solution stack today. And so I know that the team has been using it for a while. There's definitely, a lot of moving pieces as the product continues to evolve. If one side is the core of your resident operations and kind of the brain trust of the community, when we think about, as it pertains to leasing, ILM is very much the equivalent, right? And so there's a lot of moving parts to that. And certainly we know that, and we often know that that sometimes we just need these sessions to calibrate on what the expectations are. What can I expect the system to do? What can I not expect the system to do? And where do we go to just make sure that we have a good experience? And so to that, I'm going to start in a PowerPoint today, just briefly, and then we're going to get into a live environment because, quite frankly, I hate PowerPoints and they're not fun and they're not engaging. And I certainly want you guys to feel empowered to reach out and ask questions throughout the training session today. A little bit about myself. Mentioned I've been with RealPage for 6 years. I'm a director over the product success group. One thing that I love to do, I haven't done these types of trainings in a little bit here, but I used to lead a lot of these, and ultimately it's around investing into all of you. And I know the Landmark philosophy and Judy and Sherry and everyone there from a leadership perspective feels the same way. And so, I was excited we're able to get so many people into a room today. Thank you for that, Judy. And really, go through this training. This is one of my 2 sons. I actually now have one that's as old as that one is now. And a 3.5-year-old, but just a little bit about myself. So for today, Judy, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words, or if you probably primed everyone already ahead of the training, but certainly just what the expectations of today's call are and what we want everyone to hopefully get out of today. We can cover that real quickly. Focusing on key concepts of lead management, certainly just want to get back down to the fundamentals and make sure that everyone feels good about what the system can do for you. And then we're going to get into a live environment, and then certainly we'll make sure we have time for open Q&A questions. As users of the platforms already, chances are you've encountered some things that you have questions on, and I'm happy to address those on today's call as well. So Judy, I don't know, do we want to skip expectations? Have you already covered that, or do you want to say a few words today?
Yeah, no, I briefly shared that, we may be hopping into various live environment, meaning our communities, and it's not that we're, picking on anybody. It's just as we go through, we may hop into various communities to show various workflows within ILM. And again, the purpose is to get you guys, not additional training. You've walked through the Easy LMS training. But I thought that it would be best, and in speaking with Michael and Lauren, and as well as Sherry and Ashley at Real World, that I felt like that we maybe fell short in the beginning when we launched this product versus without having hands-on training, or not hands-on, but in-person training. So when talking to Michael, he, offered to do this for us. And I thought, it'd be a great opportunity to bring us back together, and maybe see how the workflow, if we were a new client, how they would show it and train it, and what the expectations are as a new client coming in, and how the workflow should work. And you guys hopefully will pick up 1 or 2 things that you're like, oh, didn't get that from Easy LMS or from your day-to-day experience that you've just been, I'm not going to say winging it, but that's the best word I can use. So there you go, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, definitely want to make sure everyone walks away with today that hopefully you learned something. And that's my commitment to you, is that we're going to make this fun. I want to make it engaging. So feel free to please speak up, ask questions as we go throughout. But there is, as Judy mentioned, there is some different setups just based on the products selected from Landmark, based on your community. So I know there's a few that are using our contact center in a slightly different way from an all calls perspective, just because they're some smaller communities with only a few staff members. And so, we can touch on that, but certainly want to make sure that we're covering all different workflows and use cases. So with that, I want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Yes, everyone sees the PowerPoint. I think I got through half this presentation once. I was not even showing the right screen. So I want to make sure. Thumbs
Yeah, we
up.
can see it.
Good. All right,
Yep.
perfect. So when you think about lead management, right, we have to go all the way back to the fundamentals, and what is the signifier of an effective lead management system. And so whether you're using lead to lease, another offering in the marketplace, or even ILM, the idea is first and foremost going to be able to collect that lead traffic, right? And so, if we fast or rewind about 10, 15 years ago, your lead management system was guest card processing, was physically filling out guest cards when people called and entered, and then you were organizing them in your desk in some sort of fashion, right? And so it's like, what do I need to do next? I need to call these people. I need to email these people. These people haven't toured yet. These people have toured, but they haven't applied yet. That type of organization, right? Now, fast forward into the 21st century, and you have ILM to do that for you. And ILM, for those that hadn't caught on, is intelligent lead management. And so everything that this system is going to try to design to do is to help you work smarter, not harder, right? And so there's things like stage gate processing, the difference between a lead and a prospect, and we'll talk about that in the training today. But at the simplest form, it's going to collect that leasing traffic that you've got and generated from your marketing sources. And it used to be just call, email, right, or walk in. Now we have texting capabilities, we have chatbots, we have virtual tour schedulers, we have all this different stuff that can send us traffic now, right? And so we certainly want to be respectful of that, but ILM has to be able to handle and accept all that traffic as well. Once they come in from the advertising sources, the way I look at it is we need to be able to make it easy for you to understand who these people are, what they're looking for, is their leasing intent, and then what do I need to do next, right? Very much action-based system. And you'll notice that we designed our prospect board with that exact idea in mind. I personally was sitting in leasing offices for a good part of 6 months, and I said, wait, am I in the leasing office side or am I on the software side? And they said you're both. And it was really trying to learn the workflows that you all go through on a daily basis and create a system that's designed and catered specifically for that. And so, we definitely designed this product with that end in mind. Some of the workflows we're going to cover today, certainly taking a brand new lead from entering the system all the way through that application process. You guys use a lot of the RealPage stacks, so that make it easy for me. I appreciate that. How do we create new guest cards to this system? How do we search the system, merge functionality? We'll talk about the PMS sync queue a little bit, and then we'll talk about some of those add-ons. How does a chat lead come into the system? What can we expect that to look like? And how do we follow up with some of our guests, and as well as get notified when they're following back up with us? So those are the major workflows we're going to cover. But if you have a specific use case, feel free to shout it out as we go through these as well, or we'll make sure we save it for the end. You guys came from lead to lease, and so I wanted to show this slide because I think it's really impactful. Lead to lease is a product that's been around in the marketplace for a lot of years, and to that extent was probably, some would say, very stable, right? You didn't have a whole lot of issues with it. A lot of it was because it wasn't getting a lot of these things that you see in the screen here added to the system like ILM has been added. And so when you think about continuous publishing to one site, that's something that the real-time sync, something that we have actually probably should be highlighted here on the ILM side too. But things like prospect cultivation, the ability to merge guest cards, multiple applicants on a single guest card in ILM, right? Is advantage over lead to lease. Starting to look at guest card rankings, tracking of outbound follow-ups. The snapshot board was all brand new for Lead Manager that we don't have in Lead to Lease. And then there's some automation in the product itself that's going to help hold your prospects more accountable to actually showing up for those appointments that you've scheduled, right? In the form of iCalendar invites and things like that. Both the agent and the prospect get those if we have the email address in, and definitely something that's an advantage in the system. So I talked about this already, ILM, Intelligent Lead Management. It's when we say intelligent, it's actually going to learn from your input. And so if you're dispositioning guest cards that are coming into the system as non-leads or spam or residents, ILM is going to retain that information. And the longer you use the system, you should actually see an advantage, right? Because you're not processing the same guest card or the same piece of traffic over and over and over again if you've already told the system what or who that individual is. And so ultimately, we're trying to drive a higher lease conversion and help you stay more organized as you use the system. Questions on any of that?
Nope, we're good.
Perfect. So now let's get into a live training environment. Actually, I'm going to say training environment. This is actually just going to be a live environment for you guys. I chose Tamarack on the Lake as our initial site here. Let me zoom in. Do I need to make that a little bigger? I know you're kind of looking up from
Yeah,
this.
just a little bit.
All
Yeah.
right, perfect. So when we look at the system, right, we first and foremost have our menu bar. I don't know if you guys prefer to collapse it or not. I like to keep it expanded, at least just so I can see what all these different icons mean. But when you're in this every single day, you probably know exactly what they mean, right? When we start our day, I always want to start like if you were to walk in the morning, right? Walk in the morning, what is the first thing that I want to do? And oftentimes it's going to be going to our snapshot board. ILM wants to be extremely transparent, and we also want to focus on our customer experience. And so when we say like, how successful is my site team at using the system, the top 2 rows here with some of the graphs and charts are focused on exactly that. These are our KPIs that are going to tell us, are we effectively utilizing the lead management system, and are we following up with our prospects? And so the first thing is we're going to look at prospect traffic trending week over week and see, oh yeah, last week was in fact really busy. No wonder we felt so busy last week compared to the previous weeks. We actually did have a lot more traffic. We can look at our average contacts per prospect. This is the same equivalent to average follow-ups per lead and lead to lease, right? This is how many outbound activities you're placing to your guests, right? To following up with them and seeing if they're looking to lease or not. The lead to prospect conversion ratio is going to show us exactly how many of the total leads that came onto my leads board, how many got promoted to being a prospect. There's not a right or wrong answer here. If you've processed your leads board, think of it as the equivalent of managing a lead in lead to lease, right? Meaning we've picked it up, we've reviewed it for leasing intent, and we've dispositioned it. So it's either as a non-lead piece of traffic, or we've promoted them because there's leasing intent over to our prospect board. Now, important part about that is leads are not processed or not synced to one side automatically. Prospects are, right? And so there's an advantage, or there's a desire to get them to being a prospect if there's actually leasing intent. That'll of course do a lot of things like enable quoting and being able to schedule an appointment with them and things like that. The guest card completeness metric looks for 8 different guest card specific data points. It's going to look for first name, last name, email address, contact information, move-in date, floor plan, max price, and if they have pets or not. Okay, those are the 8 categories that that specific guest card is going to score. If every single guest card that's active in your pipeline has those 8 fields, it'll be at 100%. Now, some of those just aren't natural. They're not, prospects not willing to provide all of those on every single call. So 81% is actually about 10% higher than what we see the national average to be at 72%. So good job to the Tamarack team. But ultimately, just want to make sure that we have enough basic information about our guests to be able to lease to them, right? That's the name of the game here. And so 81%. I would say is an extremely healthy score, but just track this over time, right? Are we getting better? Are we worse? Are we staying the same? Are we staying at that same, high 10% over national average level? And that would be the goal here. Average
Could you
time to,
repeat,
go ahead.
hey, Michael, could you repeat those 8?
Yeah, and I can send this over too, right? You're gonna challenge me on. I always miss like the last one. I feel like first name, last name, email address, contact information, so phone number, move-in date, floor plan. Do they have pets, and what's the max price they're willing to stay, or what's their budget?
Okay,
I think that's it. I have to count on my fingers.
I think it is.
All right, cool. Average time to respond. So this metric's looking at from the time at which it took the guest card to initially reach out to you, so inbound traffic, how long did it take us to place an outbound communication back to them? Okay. Now, if we never place an outbound communication, that guest card's not going to be included in this initial metric. So let's say you had a conversation with them, or they called and left a voicemail after hours on a Friday, you're closed Saturday and Sunday, and you call 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. Monday morning, it's going to take that entire time into account, right? This is through the eyes of the prospect. We say that we have really fickle buyers in this market today. They have lots of choice. So, taking this metric in their eyes is the way to go. I know that it's not respectful of your operational hours. The biggest focus here is if you can be under 24 hours or less. RealPage has done studies to suggest that the likelihood to lease to that individual increases 3 times. 3 times more likely to be able to lease to somebody if we're under 24 hours in this metric, as opposed to if we're over 24 hours in this metric. The national average on this metric, believe it or not, is 72 hours. Now, some of that could account for weekends and things like that. But if this property is significantly under that, good job to the team again. Definitely something we would want to see in this time slot or time range.
All right, we do have one question here. Is the average time to respond, is it based on a lead or when you've made them a prospect?
So this is actually based on when the guest card was created, and it should be based on both, but might have to check on that one. Most of these are prospect driven. Of course, this is total volume that's coming in, leads and prospects. This by definition is a prospect. This is kind of that both lead to prospect. This is based on prospect guest cards alone. It's important to know that one. And this one, I thought it was both, right?
And I would, and I'm gonna chime in, I would presume, and again, you can triple check this behind me, is because if for the majority of our communities, we only are using contact center for text and chat. We have 2, which is Lisa Harris and Olivia. They have all calls.
Yep.
So if you have contact center in front of the lead that's coming in, they're vetting that. And when they push it in, it goes straight to prospect.
Yep.
So if it's someone that's text or chat and that you get a guest card from contact center, it's going to go straight to prospect. So I assume that average time would be based on when it comes in as prospect versus if it's on apartments.com and they send an email from apartments.com, it's going to come in as a lead. And then you have to work the lead to make it a prospect. So when it comes in as a lead, it's going to start counting. How long did it take you to respond to that email? Did I say that right, Michael?
You did. Yep. So, and that's true for certainly, yeah, for the contact when we're taking the calls for a few of those properties. But definitely we want to make sure we're cultivating our lead board, and this is for everybody because of not just the calls and emails, but then the chat, like you said, chat should come over into the respective columns of the prospect board. But other than that, right, all that other traffic's going to originate on your lead board, and that's where we certainly want to start. After we look at our snapshot, that's exactly where we're going to start our day.
All right, we have one more question.
Yep.
Does if a prospect goes online and enters all the information in the guest card, is it automatically going to put prospect, or they automatically land in there because they filled out those 8 categories, or is it going to go to lead?
It's going to go to if and again, the majority of this group, other than Lisa and Olivia, it's if they go to the ILS website and complete a guest card and say, I'd like more information on this, it's going to come into the lead bucket. But it's going to have good guest card completeness if they filled out those 8 pieces of data.
So it's never gonna automatically go to,
No, it's going to
Prospect.
land in lead, and you have to cultivate the lead to move it to prospect.
unless it comes over through chat and text.
So,
as an appointment,
right.
and then it'll go to
Yep.
prospect.
Sounds like you guys got it.
Okay, continue.
Perfect. Awesome. So we feel good on the first two columns on the headers up here. Any questions on those?
Any questions on the 2 for, no, I think we're
Okay.
good.
Fantastic. So then the next thing I want to do as a leasing professional is I want to start looking at my follow-ups, right? Now, unlike lead, well, similar to lead to lease, I guess, in a way, these are follow-up reminders. Okay, so this is when we're flagging the guest card saying, hey, follow-ups are due for my individual guests. Now, these are filterable by agent, right? So we can certainly do that. So we can target our own, but we also want to start kind of backwards. And this is because think of the 5th reminder as like this is a critical follow-up, meaning a reminder has been generated for 5 days or more, and we have not yet placed an outbound communication or actually followed up with that individual. So at this community, there's no 5s, there's no 4s, there's no 3s, there's a few 2s in here, not many, and then there's some 1s. The 1s were generated today. So I see Taylor on, and it looks like Taylor and Sherry, right? You guys are doing great. Good work. Got to give you a little bit of a kudos there. But that's exactly what I want to do, right? I want to step backwards and see which guest cards do I need to be following up with first, right? So, for this one, I can look and follow up and see I need to make for an appointment, possibly for Germani. I can launch the guest card directly from the snapshot page, right? So now I don't need to go find for this one. I don't need to do anything. I know exactly what I need to do. And I can actually see that, this one was updated from the property management system. This was actually a chat transcript. So if I wanted to go into chat, I can view that transcript and what chat happened. It looks like, I think that was Friday with this individual, right? And so we said, okay, we're going to reach out to you. Reach out to us if you need anything, right? They're asking for some availability into 2 or 3 bedrooms. We know that according to the system, there's no 3 bedrooms available. So probably need to focus on maybe that 2-bedroom deal. But it's assigned a house when it comes in. And this is important, right? So one of the easiest ways, and we'll talk about it on the prospect ward, one of the easiest ways to see what guest cards are coming over from contact center is it's going to automatically come over to house if it's a brand new guest card. Now, if it's a guest card that you've already been working with, it should come over into your name and merge automatically, right? Assuming this information is the same. But if it's coming over in the house, we just need to go ahead, figure out which one of us is going to pick it up. And I don't know, Taylor, is it okay if I assign this to you? Let's see, make it come off mute. All right, we're going to assign it.
Says yes in the chat.
All right, so we're going to assign this to Taylor. Now, one of the things is, and I always like to point this out, is the related activity section is going to be your chronological history. Now, we broke out your communication, but you'll notice everything that happens to this guest card is going to be notated here, and the system is going to do it automatically for you. So gone are the days in lead and lease that you have to add a follow-up to a guest card and say that I actually called the person. If you call it in the system, it's automatically going to add it for you. If I change assignment, automatically add it. And you could say not only who was added to the guest card, but who was it assigned by, right? Important just from an auditing standpoint, but the whole guest card history from the very first time it entered the system on the 29th through today, chronological order here, I always have access to it. I can see exactly what happened to this individual, right? This is also important when we think about it's summertime. People like to take maybe a day off, right? You earned it. Take a day off. Go have fun. If that's the case, though, right, we don't want to impact the prospect experience. And so let's say Taylor's taking the day off and I need this individual reaches out or calls me, or I want to follow up with them. I can do so either to her name, or if certainly it progresses and this individual is looking to lease and I deserve credit for it, then we can, of course, change it into my name as well before we push the application to them. Lots of cool things here. This one isn't on a prospect board. I know that for two reasons. One, it's got a one-site ID already at the top of it. So this is, I don't know if you guys saw that or recognize that, but one-site ID will automatically be at the top of every single one of your prospect guest cards. You'll also see the ready to apply button instead of the make a prospect button. And I'll have the ability to do things like quote them, mark an appointment with them, things like that. So I definitely know this guest card is sitting on my prospect board.
I have a question.
We have one
Yep.
question.
So if this came over the 29th, so Friday, and then they're just getting notice today to follow up. So is that
Good
correct?
question. Yep, I got it. So on our prospect board, our follow-up reminder, the automated schedule is differentiated based on where the guest card sits on the system. So if it's a lead in a lead status, the follow-up is going to be every 24 hours until you move them over to a prospect. At the time at which they're a prospect, the follow-up schedule is based on the columns that they're in, and we'll talk about it when we get over there. In general, if they're in the in progress queue, it's going to be a 72-hour default. Now, you as a leasing professional have the ability to change that schedule, right, and make it your own based on your own follow-up needs and expectations. But certainly the system already has pre-programmed in it some of that follow-up schedule automatically. Everything in the prospect board 72 hours except for after they tour. That's going to be the industry standard. We need to follow up with them 24 hours or less after they tour. So
where do we go to find the prospects that are just coming in over like the weekend or Friday?
How do you get notified on that? I can help you. I can help you with that too. And thank you for that. Your dollar or your checks in the mail for the key up there and the nice segue. I appreciate it. The needs attention section, right? So this was originally designed. I want to talk about this. This was originally designed as kind of a call log, right? So I have one of my associates, coworkers is out on a tour, and I'm sitting with a resident at the desk and my phone's ringing, right? And it rings and rings, and it rang 3 different times for 3 different people over the course of the 30 minutes that I was sitting with this resident. I want to be able to go back and look in the ILM system to see who called me and why were they calling me, basically, right? So the needs attention section actually is flagged when something happens. And specifically, it's not going to flag every single guest card, but it's going to flag the guest cards that we think that you might have missed. So I'm going to place a call to this community right here. And let's let it ring on through. And let's see if we can get it to flag here in the ILM system. I hope I'm calling the right number. I pre-programmed it in my phone. Maybe not.
Taylor says it's ringing.
Oh, it's ringing on site. Wondering why it's not ringing through, why the little pop-up. I might not have the pop-up setting on this property for some reason. We'll have to look at that. Make sure the little blue box icon is popping up. So it's ringing. So do you guys see, how many of you see the little blue box pop up in your communities?
We have 3 hands up, 4.
So we probably need to make sure we have all hands up, and that's something we can look at. So I'm gonna put a note for caller ID.
Okay.
So except for the properties that go to my privacy settings here. Oh, look at all these that are off. So enable blue pop. So if you each as a user, you have the ability to hide the pop-up notifications or turn them on. Okay.
And where did you get that? Under your profile, under your name?
So if you go to your name and you go to my profile, it looks like many of you do know how to add your avatar and do some cool stuff like that. That's awesome. You can configure your desk phone number. This is the number this is the phone number of the phone that you use that sits on your desk. So it's either your community direct line. If you have a unique extension to your own number, that's what you want to put here. You can also configure your signature here as well. Most of the templates are probably branded with a full signature anyway, so you don't necessarily always need to use it. But you can put that here. but you want to make sure you have this in here that makes outbound calling easier for you as an individual. You want to check your signature if that makes it easier for you. Send in emails if you'd like. The privacy settings, these ones we'll talk about. So the pop-up notifications are important. I'm going to see if I can get a pop-up notification to flag on this now that we've turned this on for this community for me. And we'll see if it rings through. And again, I could just be I might have the community direct line. No, it's an ILM number. I'm also an admin user, so it's gonna look all weird. But we want to make sure that those notifications are enabled. And here's why. So first and foremost, when they're enabled, we get information about the caller. Is this a brand new lead that's calling us? Is this the 10th time they're calling us and they're a resident and they're probably just asking me when's rent due? Here you go. So here's our pop-up, right? This one's telling me that they're calling from the property website number, that we don't have their bedroom type, their move-in date. We can see the status, and we can also see that this is unassigned. This will, every single time the phone rings on site, you should be getting this notification. Okay. This notification is cool because it's going to tell me things. If I can, one, launch the guest card right there, but also if I click on this button, and this is where it's going to come full circle, and I apologize, it took me a minute to get there. If I click on this button, the idea is that I'm taking this call. I'm processing this guest card real time. If that's the case, I don't necessarily need to give it attention because the system thinks that I already have. But I did not in this case, right? I didn't click that icon. So now when I go to my needs attention section, at the very top, you can see that there's a lead from Michael Mankoff, the caller ID information, and that it called 1 minute ago. So this needs attention section is essentially a call log of the items that we think that you as a community might have missed. And it used to be 72 hours. And then we had this little thing called Thanksgiving that people were off for 4 or 5 days in a row. And this queue was basically cleared out. This queue will stay like this for 7 full days. Okay. So guest cards from now till 7 days prior will stay on here. Now, with the exception of how do we clear them off? Now, if we placed an outbound call back to me, that would be the easiest way, or an email back to me, that would be the easiest way to clear traffic off of this board. Now, there is some things like a non-lead resident. All we need to do is we should be able to launch their guest card. We should be able to listen to the call that they called us, make sure we understand why they called us. And then simply by closing the guest card out again, it should be able to be removed from the queue. Sometimes in my environment, I've seen that I've had to actually refresh the page to clear them out. But now you'll see it went from 20 down to 19, and that specific resident, I don't remember the name of the guest card, but that specific resident is no longer here. Okay. So that is how we're going to manage our needs attention section. Questions on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Where does that non-lead go? It just goes away?
So where did that basically non-lead go? Kind of like in the workflow at the far right in the non-lead column, or?
Yes. So that lead was already dispositioned as a non-lead resident.
Yep.
So now it didn't go anywhere. ILM never deletes guest cards from the system, but it took it out of basically your view. So if I actually went to my non-lead resident column, area of my leads board, here's the guest cards that have the specific non-lead resident calls that have called us over the last 7 days, right? And you can even keep going farther back, 17 days. It's going to go all the way back up to 28 days because that's the date range filter I had here. ILM will never delete the guest card. So for example, here, I can always call them back through the system if I'd like to. It's not going to do anything. I mean, if I accidentally close this as a resident, but they're not, you can always go reopen the guest card, right? And bring it back into your normal queues. I just get a lot of questions around, well, they're not a resident. I don't need to follow up with them to try to lease, or they're not a validated piece of traffic, right? They're a resident. How do I get this out of my needs attention section? And that was just the way I showed you. So for anyone that's not, in a closed status, so, or non-lead resident, non-lead other, these are closed statuses of guest cards. All I need to do, here's burrito, burrito, that's funny, and burrito, I suppose. I don't need to reopen the guest card. I just need to open it enough to say that I've launched it. You don't necessarily have to listen to the recording, how that conversation went, but then I just close out the X again. You can do that, of course, with all of your leads. And then again, my system just, I don't know if it's just me or if this is just a nuance of the system that we got to follow up with the product team on. But you'll notice now that Mr. Burrito is no longer here, right, in my needs attention section.
Why does it recognize some residents where you could just click save and then other ones you already make them a resident? Does that make sense to anybody?
Why is it flagging like this specific caller as a resident?
No, some of them recognize them as a resident and you just have to click save and it closes it out. But other ones, after you mark it, why can't it recognize it like the other ones?
Gotcha. So there's two different types of resident categories in ILM. One is you guys have marked them as non-lead because they were a resident. Theoretically, these are on your rent roll or you haven't processed them in ILM, you process them in lead to lease, which makes sense. As well as there's a status for guest cards that are showed as that are going to flag as moved in. Those specific guest cards you have processed from the through the ILM system to their lease. So they're both residents technically, but the one was processed in the system and one was not processed using ILM.
So the ones that weren't, we have to, I guess, physically save them again.
Well, they're saying if you press play and then stop it.
You don't have to, you don't necessarily have to press play, right? So here, there's no save button on this specific guest card because it's closed out, right? It's a closed as a non-lead. You do not have to reopen the guest card to be able to clear this individual from your queue, right? And again, I'm going to do this here just for the sake of time. It should refresh if I went away from this page and back to it, but now we're, this is how those residents are going to be cleared from your needs attention section. I spend a lot of time on this because I get a lot of questions here, but the end of the day is the needs attention section is just going to help you understand what guest cards might need to be addressed. It is absolutely not, we didn't know the system is fully capable, or you're fully capable of using the system without even having to really manage this queue. If you so choose, this is a nice queue to have because it makes sure we look at the things that might have been missed.
So that would be your second stage after you have finished your follow-ups, is just to check if they so choose the attention.
Yeah. And things are going to happen throughout the day, right? Like I would say come back to your snapshot board early and often. If you're, we know you're not in just ILM all day. You probably have one site open right next to your ILM system, right next to your Outlook, right next to your calendar, right next to, who knows what else, right? And so we know you're not going to be in, having this system open all the time, but you should hopefully come in the morning, sign into one site, sign into ILM, get signed into your Outlook, and really just kind of get yourself ready for the day. The snapshot page when you're coming back to ILM is always a great place to start and look. So that way we can see, hey, what might have I missed, right? Or not. Also, if your phone's ringing, having ILM open on your desktop already, flip over to that tab and once we get that blue caller ID up box for everybody, see who's calling, right? Now now you're more prepared to answer the phone before you even have to answer it. Know exactly who this is, what they're probably calling about, and then you can even launch that guest card right there. And now you don't have to go find the individual in your system. It's ILM's already going to pull it up for you.
So as an example, a question was like, so again, a prospect reaches out by phone.
Mm-hmm.
You were away from your desk. You didn't see the blue box. You didn't hear your phone or anything.
They're going to be.
Will it show in needs attention or in follow-ups?
So follow-ups are on a predetermined schedule, right? And
Correct.
so because they just called, you
It's gonna
don't,
be in your
you
call.
don't- they'll be in your call log. They'll be on you'll be able to find them either on the leads or prospect board respectively. You know, the follow-up, this is a follow-up reminder schedule, and that's when the follow-up is due. So
Okay,
somebody called me today that was a brand new lead. They're not going to show up in the follow-up column until tomorrow.
okay.
Yeah.
What about a prospect? Like the prospect that came over on the 29th.
It's 3 days.
So, but where do you go if you want to?
It should be in the follow-up.
Follow-ups.
It'll be in the follow-ups, but it'll also be on the prospect board, right? And so the snapshot page is think of it as like the cockpit, right? Like this is where I'm going to get a really good feeling of what's going on, but you do not have to. Cockpit might be a bad analogy. I mean, you usually got to drive from the cockpit. You can drive in ILM, and we want you to spend the most of your time probably on your prospect board, right? So this is going to give me a really good overview of what's going on at my community. So if you're flipping back and forth from one site back to ILM, start on your snapshot page. Make sure that all my appointments for day, I know exactly who I'm touring and when, and who's touring them. Look at your needs attention to see if you have any, inbound lead traffic that you need to address, that you perchance missed on your lunch break. Look up at the cleanup section. So how many leads do I have sitting that I have not even contacted yet? Those are the things that to check on. And again, a great place to start your day. So if I do all my follow-up activities that are flagged here and I look through most of my needs attention, I should have probably reached out to or managed most of the guest cards, hopefully on my leads board. And I should have a really good running start on some of those older prospects that are probably further down our leasing lifecycle and down the funnel, probably closer to conversion, right? And I know how important those are to all of you. So those are the things that we want to think about. Since we've been on this phone, right? This community's been busy. They've already, had 2 other guest cards, enter the system, and there's even some outbound activity on. So that's even better. There's some text messages here, right? This board is designed so I can, try to process that traffic. I can understand that there's been 2 inbound calls from this number. There's been 0 outbound calls, and even shows me the last contacted on these, right? Now, one thing you'll notice is guest cards that come into the system are in italics. So if I open this guest card, yes, this is me, but the guest card's blank, right? We do not assume caller ID is accurate. This could have been my wife, Maggie, calling from my number, right? It could have, sometimes we see city, state, just IDs, the generics in for caller ID. So we're not going to pre-populate the guest card. How many of you knew you can click this little button here and knows what it does? Fun.
Everyone's shaking a no.
That's all right. So I'm going to click this button. Oop, if the caller ID is right, it's going to automatically pop that first name and last name in the caller ID into the first and last name.
Ooh.
No, that's why we do this stuff, right? It's trying to make it easier for you, right? The other thing is let's say the first name was wrong, but the last name was right. You can actually drag and drop. If you highlight, drag and drop the name in there too. And then this could, be my wife, for example. We'll leave it be me for now. So we'll put this back to Michael. We want to make sure we have complete guest cards. Email address is required. So let's go ahead and fill that out. Got my phone number on here. We're going to request to text this individual. Looking for a 2-bedroom. We can pick a specific floor plan. We can do a move-in date, right? I do have a pet golden retriever. He's 110 pounds and he's a beast, but I love him. Sitting here in my office with me right next to the fan, actually. But I'm going to go ahead, and this is a new feature we're actually turning on for you guys, and I want to share it with you. So if you went and did all this hard work, and I'm just going to assign this to Taylor. We went and did all this hard work, and then I go and hit save this guest card rather than automatically making them a prospect. The system's actually going to prompt you and say, hey, you've made some changes to this lead guest card. Are you sure you don't want to make it a prospect? Hopefully, we got enough information. We've had a conversation with this individual. Yes, I'm comfortable. I want to make this guest card a prospect. Now, as soon as we do so, one, we notice that it's written to one site. We get a one site ID back, right? We now have the ability within the guest card to quote them and tour them and make an appointment. We have some specifications on the guest card already. We've sent them a text message requesting to be texted. And most importantly, where did the guest card go? It's not on my leads board anymore. Come on, guys, where'd it go? And the prospect board. The idea of our leads board is to get through these pieces of traffic and try to assess whether or not it's validated or not. If it's not, we can always go into the guest card and we can close them out as a non-lead. We have a variety of different reasons that we can choose from to make them a non-lead, right? And then we can add any additional comments if we want. Again, it won't delete the guest card, but it will remove it from the board. The idea would be is that we're staying at 1 to 2 pages maximum on our lead board at any given time. We really want to disposition our prospects to know if there's leasing intent or not. Everyone feel good about that?
Yes, we're shaking our head, yes. All
right, shaking our head, yes, that works. So now I'm going to flip over to our prospect board. As I mentioned, this is where you're probably going to spend about 70–80% of your day in lead management, of course, right? The idea of this board was actually designed, and they're texting back and forth. This is a great way to see how we're getting texted. You'll notice the pop-ups need to be there, right? So that's important. This is designed in 2 views. One view is this guest card view. This was designed to have different stages of the prospect lifecycle across the top. And I'm going to be able to see how many guest cards exist in each specific status, right? That's the little count up here. But more importantly, if I look at this far left column, these are all the guest cards that are in progress that we know exactly what we need to do with them. We know we need to try to schedule an appointment with them, right? And so that's going to be my goal for all of these guest cards in the status. Now I have available to me, I can look at guest cards that were assigned to a specific person. I can also see if I'm Taylor, I can go and kind of quickly see which guest cards are mine versus which ones are assigned to Sherry, right? So I can do all of that just by looking at the guest card. I even know that they're looking for a 2-bedroom moving in August 6th, right? Because that's what we filled out on the guest card. So this is kind of giving me a quick view, if you will, of the guest card and what they're looking for before I ever even have to launch the guest card itself. Kind of cool. Now for those communities that have lots and lots of prospects and like hundreds of in prospects progress, one of the things I recommend is we created this alternative view. This is called our table view. For those that, you know, had a huge affinity for lead to lease, you might like this view. This kind of looks more like lead to lease, right? It's now a list format. And now I can use all of these that are shown here are going to be in progress. If I wanted to look at my appointment, I can flip over there. If I want to look at my toured, I can flip here, or my people that are in my application status, I can flip over there, right? So which preference, you know, you prefer, that's completely entirely up to you on an individual user basis. I could have 2 users at the same community using 2 different views, no problem at all, right? It is again, personal preference. If I'm in the cards view, this is the one I personally like. I'm going to stay with this one for training today, if that's okay. I kind of view this as a game. We're trying to get this guest card from our in progress status all the way through the different respective sections of the prospect lifecycle, appointment, tour, hopefully apply, right? We're trying to move it from left to right. Simple as that. The best part about ILM is that as I process this guest card, I'm not going to have to move the guest card manually. It's going to do it automatically for me as we move through the different stages of the specific guest card. How many feel comfortable or confident in all the different ways we can reach out back to Michael? Hopefully,
yeah, they seem like they're good. Yep.
Awesome. So let's first start by trying to send an email. So the first thing is, you'll notice we've requested the text. We have not yet had that turned on because I need a reply start, which I might as well do now just to show, right? But also, let's start with an email. So they reached out. We're going to create an email. Now, I believe we've preloaded, most of the communities should have some customized templates that are already loaded. This one happens to has a lot. That's great. Let's do first follow-up, right? Or we can do, well, yeah, let's do first follow-up. So now we can, with a few clicks of a button, be responding back to Michael. We got these beautiful HTML branded templates here, but they're customizable, right? So, you know, to the extent that you guys are comfortable, make it your own a little bit. If you wanted to, you certainly have the ability, right? And so, you know, they specifically asked me about, you know, the 2 bedrooms. Maybe I want to insert a sentence about 2 bedrooms, if I can in the template. Application information, you know, that's great. Like, what do we need from our application? Looking at all these are awesome. Hey, you got a dead lead or an possibly old prospect, trying to see if they're still interested. Use the templates. They are definitely your friend, right? Once I select the template, you know, I can certainly amend anything I want. I can attach a file from Marketing Center. Even if I wanted to add additional picture, all of these are pre-approved images that already exist in your Marketing Center. You can add these to some of your emails, right? So if I wanted to show them the pool and show them the tennis court, that's awesome. Yeah, I like both of those things. I can add those. Now remember, it's wherever your cursor's at in the email. So just make sure you're being cautious of where you're adding those into the email template. But I can go ahead and I can click send. And with all of, what did that take me? 20 seconds. I'm a little long-winded, so maybe a little more than that. But we responded back to Michael very, very quickly, right? Definitely an easy way to communicate. You'll notice that I've now responded start or yes. So now the ability to text me is also available in the system. We can go ahead and do send SMS. Now you can do templates for your SMS as well. But quite frankly, you know, these are going to be quick conversations, right? So you can maybe start with a brief reply, asking for preferred contact time and number to discuss the needs. You know, would you like a tour? Would you like a tour? Right? We can do that type of stuff. And we can be sending texts back to Michael very, very quickly in the system as well. That's how we're going to be able to text. If this is sitting in a requested status or a no, it's going to be locked. One requested locks it down and you don't have the functionality available to you until they reply start. If it's in a no status or NA status, that means that specific individual has replied stop. Okay. Now, if you're stuck on a guest card where they've replied stop and they've locked that functionality down from you, but then they ask you to text you again, they have to go find your text message conversation and reply start for you to have that functionality back, right? The only way we can provide that functionality again is if it's prospect driven. This is just CAN spam texting laws. 10DLC's the newest litigation that came out on texting. ILM is 100% compliant, but we have to rely on the prospects to basically tell us and that they do want to use this communication form and channel. You comfortable with that?
Question.
Yep.
Does a text count as a follow-up?
An outbound text message does count as a follow-up activity. I do believe there's some logic built into ILM system where if you're texting like 10 million times back and forth with an individual in a very small time period, it's not going to count and register as like 10 million follow-ups, right? That's a single follow-up point in conversation that's being had with that individual. So there is some logic built into there. I don't know the specifics, but outbound texting does count as a specific follow-up. Yes.
One more question.
Is there a reason why the last side has to be on there if it's lost?
Is there a reason why outside of this guest card, the far right column lost is maintained? Is that could you hide that anyway?
Could you hide it? Absolutely. So the idea with lost and being included on this prospect board is the idea of remarketing, right? And so especially if we lose them because of price or availability, what happens when you get an unexpected early move out, right? Someone got a job offer they couldn't refuse in California. They decided to move. Someone that perhaps you didn't have any availability in the 3-bedroom at this community. Now all of a sudden you have a 3-bedroom available, right? And so reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, they're not looking to move till September 20th, and they were looking for a 2-bedroom. Maybe, I know I said 3, let's just say 3 for this instance, right? Argument's sake, we could potentially remarket to them and say, hey, actually do have a 3-bedroom available now. Are you still interested? And so from a remarketing capability standpoint, that is why we show on the default board the lost. Now, some of you probably have questions and saying, why do I have all these denied, canceled, moved in guest cards showing on this application status column as well, right? This community doesn't have any. They're cleaned up and looking pretty good. That's because those are still considered to be, when we're looking at all prospects, they're still considered to be in the last contact in the last 28 days, they're still considered to be kind of there, right? You might have to do move-in checklists with them. You might have to ask questions, get them signed up for active billing, those types of things, right? Now, when we do status equals open, it'll remove all those canceled, denied, moved in guest cards from the application status, and it will take all the guest cards away from your lost column. So is this what maybe the team would prefer as their default view? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's busy for me, but I'm on the site, so it's what you guys want.
Taylor says yes.
There
Yeah, I
you go.
think everybody's saying yes.
So what you can do, let's go back to my profile section. Again, this is an individual user setting. Go to your privacy. This last one right here says view only open prospect guest cards on prospect board by default. If I flip this on to yes and I save my changes, when I go to my prospect board, it's going to automatically filter to that status equals open. So that view we're just looking at right now, this will be your default moving forward. You always have the ability to go back to all prospects but you'll notice if I navigate to the agent page, right? And then I navigate back. This is more for property managers looking at load balancing purposes and otherwise, regional managers, etc. So won't spend a lot of time on that one. Just know that it's there. But I go back to my prospect board, and now this is my default view. So if that's the preferred view, 100% understand and agree. You have the ability to change that in your My Profile section.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. All right. So we've texted Michael, we've emailed Michael. We're gonna call Michael, but I can't call myself as much as I try. I'm very humble. So Judy knows this about me. Lauren would probably laughing in the background too. Is that I can't call myself as much as I'd like to. So I want to call one of you. So do I have a volunteer? Maybe someone that has their phone out in their hand, not paying attention to my training today. Just kidding. Who can I call? I want a number.
All right, so I'll yell it out to you.
Okay.
804.
804.
774 8990.
8990. All right, perfect. We're gonna go ahead and save this number into the guest card. You'll notice this went back to no because it's a brand new number, right? We have not gotten authorization from this number to text, so we'd have to send a request again if we wanted to do that. It even gives me a little notice at the top here saying as much, but we're not going to text today. We're going to actually place a call. So how many people, hopefully everyone in the room raised their hands. How many people have used outbound calling in ILM?
Yeah, hands are up.
That's good. I like to see it. This is important for 2 reasons. One is if you have not used the feature, you haven't gotten credit for any of your follow-up activities, right? Number 2 is you don't fat finger anything. I don't know about you, but I can't dial. I did whatever it is, right? I usually click one button on my phone, it's saved, and there we go. I'm going to go ahead and do call contact. Now, I think Taylor even says on here that you can change the number at which you're calling from. That's exactly right. So, whatever number I pre-programmed into my desk phone in my profile section, this could show up by default here, right? So you don't have to type in a number every single time. Very, just kind of annoying. So set your number in your profile section if it's the one you're using the majority of the time. Now, if I'm floating between properties and this number is going to change, That's important to know. If I don't know what our work from home status is, but let's say I'm out at the, and I need to follow up with an individual, but I only have my cell phone in front of me, what have you, you can do that too. And the important part here, not saying that's approved or not, sorry, Judy, if it's not, but the important part here is that no matter what the number is, we're actually going to call this prospect back on the number that they dialed, right? So I don't know about you, but when I've shopped for my last apartment, I had a favorite and I put that number that I called and I put it in my phone, right? I wanted to know when they were gonna call me back, and because I don't answer usually numbers that I don't recognize. If we call them back on the same number they put in their phone, then they're gonna know that this is Tamarack on the Lake, and their chances of them answering are hopefully higher, right? So that's again, the intelligence of the system trying to help support conversations moving forward. So what I'm going to do, you do not need to do this pre-recorded greeting. In fact, I advised against it. We're not recording your outbound calls. We do have that capability. We're not for any of your communities. If you click this button, it's going to play an automated voice recorder. This is Tamarack on the Lake calling you back. Chances are they're probably going to hang up. Hopefully not. They might. Don't click this button. Okay, there's a reason why it's defaulted off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my number of the desk phone. As soon as I click call contact, all that's going to happen is my desk phone is going to ring. I'm going to press 1, and we're going to get connected to this individual here. So I'm going to turn my volume ringer up. I don't even know what I have. This is a new phone for me. Ooh, nice and loud. I'm going to answer it.
Please press 1 to connect to 804-774-8990.
Right, you don't have to let it ring the whole time, but you press 1, and now we're calling just like we would any other prospect. There we go. We're connected.
Hello.
Yep, there you go. I hear, but I'm going to go ahead and hang up because that's going to be horrible background noise for all of you. But we got connected, right? Now we can even tell the system was the call answered or not answered. Now, if it was answered, it's going to keep the guest card open for me, and I can have that conversation. So I don't know who I called, but thank you for the volunteer. Really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and say we're going to schedule an appointment. So we can schedule an appointment. We can pick a specific date and time. Does everyone know what the color coding means on the ILM calendar here when I'm scheduling appointments?
No.
No. So here on Friday, there's already an appointment on the calendar for 10 a.m. Now it's not red, so we haven't hit the max number of appointments allowable, but there is already an appointment scheduled for this time. So if I want to try to avoid that, I can. Now, if it was red, that means you've hit the max limit and we cannot schedule for that time. But predominantly otherwise, a lot of these other time slots are available. I'm going to go ahead and schedule for 11 a.m. on Friday, and I can put any sort of comment I want, likes renovated units or something to that effect, right? Whatever that conversation that I had was. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Now, how many people can tell me the 3 different things that happen when we book an appointment in ILM?
Goes on the calendar.
Goes on the ILM calendar. Yes, it does. Actually, it's 4 things, I suppose. If we needed to view this appointment in one site, could we? Yeah, it's going to sync the appointment over to one site.
Said that with confidence. Yes.
Take it over. And the other 2 things there's the iCalendar invite pieces, right? So the agent of record, Taylor, who's assigned, is going to get an iCalendar invite that they can add that appointment to their own personal calendar, right? For the Outlook calendar, if that's where they're managing their day. The other thing that's going to happen is that the prospect, as long as we have a good email for them, is also going to get that iCalendar invite, right? For that specific date and time, so they can add it to their calendar on their phone as well. The last thing that happens, not necessarily technology, I mean, it's just technology, is you'll notice that Michael's guest card has moved from in progress. Now it automatically moved over into the appointment status column, right?
Yep.
So the guest card is going to keep automatically moving as we get closer to a lease for you. And all that's automatic. How many notes have I had to put in this guest card so far? Basically none, right?
None.
But if you look at this history, everything that we've done to this guest card today, right? From changing numbers to calling to emailing to texting, it is all here. We really, really want to make it easy for you all. Just manage your leads and the system's going to notate the rest. Hopefully we're seeing
Got
smiles,
it.
Judy.
Yeah, we did, well, it's noon here, so we did order pizza, so they're
Oh.
probably thinking,
Yeah, they're ready. They're getting hungry. I get it. All right, I got to speed up then. Save a piece of pepperoni for me, will you?
will do.
All right. Now, do I need to work through the quoting functionality? This is the exact same that Lead to Lease had.
No, they're good on quoting.
We're good on quoting. All right. So we can deliver quotes. We can certainly know how to email quotes and all that fun stuff. Tours. So we can certainly go in, and when Friday comes around, we know we showed Michael this specific unit 10, the specific floor plan vacant ready now, right? We can select that unit, and we can save that into the guest card.
Can you choose more than one unit if he toured 10 and 12?
So if you toured 10 and 12, yes, you can. So I know one site has the difference between units and tours, right? Or between visits and tours, excuse me. So every single time we go and we notate or we hit this button save, it's going to register a visit in one site. Every box we check is going to register a tour. Okay. So if we want one visit to be one tour, you want to select the unit they were most interested in and put the rest of the units that they were seen in the comments. I don't know your specific company, policy here, but if the concept is one visit equals one tour, we want one checkbox and then the rest are going to go in the comment section. If we want one visit and then potentially multiple tours because we showed multiple units, we can select multiple boxes and then click save.
Understood. Yep.
Okay. Don't want to screw up those
Sure.
ratios.
The most popular?
From his, the most popular.
Okay.
Yeah. Choose the most popular.
Okay, and then everything else goes in the comments. Okay, got it.
Fantastic. Now you can obviously log different tour types as well as they're available. It's going to default to on-site standard traditional tours initially. Okay, and we can see previous tours that will be appended to the guest card. Who wants to guess where I can find this guest card now?
Toured.
It's in the toured column. Ding, ding, ding. That's right. It automatically moved again for me, right? So now we're getting close to wrapping this baby up, which I love it. So now I want to go ahead and email an application link. They're ready to go, right? So I can click the button up top. This is how we're going to transition them into our online leasing experience. If they go and they apply from this link, it's going to automatically jump them forward ahead. They'll still have to select a username and password, right? If this is their first time in online leasing. But as soon as they're able to do that, anything that we quoted them that was on the quote will automatically carry over into online leasing. Okay. Now, if there's no quotes or multiple quotes that weren't, that were added, they're probably going to have to select them, or they'll have to go through that process manually if there's none available, right? But at the end of the day, this is trying to make it easier and optimize that customer experience and certainly get them into online leasing and make it easy for all of you. So we are going to send this out. They'll go ahead and they'll hopefully apply. As soon as they do, the system will reconcile that the guest card is applied from for the specific prospect ID. It's going to pull that guest card forward into our application status and actually show them as applied. Okay. Now you do have the opportunity to go ahead and mark them into a ready to apply status yourselves. I'm going to kind of advise against that given the software solutions that you guys have at play. What happens is when we click this ready to apply button, before we feel confident that this individual is actually going to go home and apply, what's going to happen is it's going to kind of lock the guest card down for you. There's going to be very little that you can do in ILM once you've told the system that they're ready to apply. The same will hold true for someone that like is now in a lease signed status, right? The system's locked down. You'll notice it says lease signed. You can still add things like, change up contact information, add comments or notes or activities to the guest card, right? But the system will even prompt you and tell you that you need to make those changes in one site as well. And that's because ILM basically we've pushed this guest card's responsibility from a system of record standpoint to fully be utilized in one site for you. We don't want you to have to update multiple systems of guest cards all the time, right? I still have the ability to call this individual. So if I wanted to communicate with them, I could still do it through ILM if I wanted to. But at this point, we certainly kind of have viewed like the system of ILM being lead management. We successfully managed this lead to the application, right? And that ultimately was our goal. And so that's, certainly we know you have to screen them and all the other fun stuff that happens after the ad application gets generated. But that's where ILM is going to hand it off to the other RealPage products to do that work. Questions on that?
If this one's a lease signed, why would it still be open? So you chose open. Why is that still on the list?
They haven't moved yet. They haven't moved in yet. Or they should, I believe they haven't moved in yet.
So I see. Okay.
So do mine.
Mine are still on there.
Mine are too.
So I don't know.
Within that time frame, within the top right corner.
So once they truly move in, or they've just signed their lease, they may not have technically moved in yet. When they move in, it becomes a closed card.
When you look at status opened, it would no longer show. That is correct. Now, I'm hearing a lot of banter.
Hang tight.
Yeah.
Yep.
What they're saying is like, we just looked at one in Old Bridge that if they moved in 2020, but they're in the application stage, of course you have all prospects. You go to open.
So if the status in ILM still shows as lease signed, I'm not sure.
Is it because they're not using the office phone? Or are they using a ILM or ILS?
So there's two reasons for that. There's two reasons for that. So one is for whatever reason, the ILM status is not being reflected as moved in. Now that should be an automatic trigger from one site. And I can't speak to that workflow. If there's something like there's a nuance where we need to be doing something in one site, I would assume that you guys are doing everything correctly there. You have the ability to go ahead and the site team on it. You can actually manually manipulate this to applicant has moved in as well if you need to. This one actually had a move-in date of March. And I don't know if Sherry or I know Taylor's on. Taylor, has Hameda actually moved in? She lives there.
She lives, yes.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and mark her as moved in and I'm going to hit save. Not a great answer, but now that they're in a moved in status, when we look at open prospects, they will no longer show up here, right?
Okay.
But to answer your question, yes, because we're ordered by last contacted, these people that are reaching out, that are still using an ILM contact number for the community, like Hameda. So now I went back to all prospects. She's still using an ILM contact information to call it the property. She called this property an hour ago, right? So because she's calling through ILM, she will show up here if you're looking at all prospects. Okay. So you have two options. One, you can get used to residents showing up here if you're looking at the all prospects view, or you can certainly just use open and they won't. Or you can furnish them the community direct line when they move in.
Mm-hmm. All right, another question.
Let's say you've given a quote, you emailed them, they're all in the right category, and they don't use that quote to apply, but they go on the website and pick another department to apply. Is the system smart enough to pick that up and merge those?
Do you hear that, Michael?
I heard they they don't use the quote in the email that you sent them, but they went on online leasing and they quoted themselves.
Apply on a different apartment. Yep.
Yep.
Will it match it up?
So great question. So that's our property management sync queue, PMS sync queue. Who feels good about this or knows what this button does?
Yeah, no one feels good about it.
I don't either, guys. So we're all on the same page. We're in this together. No, no, I do. So here, this system or this sync queue is actually doing the same exact thing that lead to lease was doing behind the scenes, but lead to lease was just creating duplicate guest cards for you guys. It was just adding them back to lead to lease as a duplicate. And I don't even think people realize that that's what was happening. ILM does not want to add duplicates to your system. So it uses the same logic, but what it's going to do is it's going to go look for it. And if there's an exact match on that applicant for whoever asked the question, it's going to it should automatically, when the sync queue runs, automatically pull that guest card into and associate it with the one that's already created in ILM, and you shouldn't have to do anything. Now, if there is any sort of difference, right? We can go into our sync queue, and for here, for as an example, we have a possible duplicate, but there's different information. So for here, we have Maya Donald that recognized it as a match for both her phone number and her name. We had 2 different email addresses provided. The PMS value, think of this as one site, property management system. This is one site's value, and this is ILM's value. We have 2 different prospect IDs, and we have 2 different statuses of the guest card. Okay. Now, in this specific case, one thing I want to pay attention to is in the example provided, the property management system value might say applied, right? If they went through that online leasing experience and actually applied. We always want to choose, when we do this merge method, the PMS prospect ID if the application is tied to it, right? So whatever guest card has the application is absolutely the one that we want to select, okay, as the one to keep moving forward. Now you have the ability to, if these ad sources differed, we have the ability to retain the ILM one, which is the one I would recommend retaining 95% of the time, because the prospect is self-selecting in online leasing what ad source they had, right? So that we don't want to trust them. We want to trust the technology. So 99% of the time, I would say just choose the ILM ID or the ILM ad source. You have the ability to do that. In this one, it's defaulting Sherry is the matching guest card assignment. Taylor, were you working Maya or was Sherry working Maya? Sherry, perfect.
Sherry.
Yep, or Sherry. Sorry, Sherry. I keep slaughtering her name. Have a piece of
No
pizza
worries.
on me. Here we go. So in this specific instance, though, right, the last update was if I look at these dates, happened on ILM, and the farther status is in ILM as well. So I actually want to choose the ILM ID as the one we're going to use going forward. Apartments.com is the same. We're going to leave this to Cherie, and I'm going to merge to ILM and close. What's going to happen is it's going to take this information from this guest card, put it in this one, and it's going to close out this guest card in one site for me because it's a duplicate and doesn't need to exist there. Okay, so we successfully did that. We merged the 2, and now we're good to go on the Mayas, and we're going to keep doing that across the board, right? So I can manage. Now I'm doing, if I do a Jalen, she has Yaz here, but applied or possibly applied or got added to the system as stacker, right? So we got to figure out which one we want to keep moving forward. The ad sources differ, as I mentioned. Let's do this ILM one. This one says any lead manager prospect IDs. We don't get the choice to choose here. This one is probably because this is in a lead status. So so this guest card is sitting in lead. There's no prospect ID. There is a prospect ID for this one. So we don't get to choose. It's automatically just going to retain this one and take some of the guesswork out for you. We're going to merge these 2 and look at, we can even do next, right? And just keep stepping through. So we're going to do all this fun stuff. I might not have the privileges to do this, so I'm kind of just going through the semantics of it.
Who won with the red?
Yeah, so the red is just going to give me a notice saying that it could not automatically be imported. When we do our best to, if there's no potential reconciliation that has to happen, we do our best to try to automatically bring those guest cards in for you. The red ones, for one reason or another, were not able to be automatically brought in, but that's okay, because if you need to import them, you can, but ILM's just basically telling you that we didn't do it for you. That's all. Now, this one looks like it might have been a guest card that's already closed out, event reason amenities lacking. I'm not even sure what that means, really. I'd be curious to see if this is a validated lead or if this is someone that was created and then closed themselves, and then they got closed out in one site before they could ever be imported in ILM. But
Let me
that's,
ask you, why would they be in the PMS in one site? So does that mean someone entered it straight into one site, or they went through online leasing
so it
and
means
started something?
they could have started something in online leasing direct, like they've created themselves in online leasing, but they didn't apply. Right. I mean, it would tell us if they applied. I mean, this would be applied rather than unmanaged, right? So they could have started in online leasing. The Bethany, this is one of the things we were looking at. Check and Judy was making sure Bethany had the widget calibrated to making sure we're updating ILM directly and not just one site, but potential widget stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if you're using any third-party products, but anything that's RPX related, that's not native to ILM or the RealPage ecosystem, that's potentially sending traffic into one site, could theoretically show up here, or the site. Yep.
Everything's set to go to ILM.
All right, cool.
I mean,
So
all our ILM should point. So I guess some of the teams are stumbling here because it's like, what do you do with this? Do you just delete it?
View it as an easy piece of traffic, right? I mean, if the move-in date or the event is in the past, and I want to be respectful of the fact that there might have been some ambiguity as far as how to use this feature originally. If it's old and you processed this one, or they're a dead lead because you've talked to them, you should, or your community manager should have the ability to delete these. We tried to take I believe we were talking about hitting a little trash can icon, and I don't know what the privileges we want to go forward with, but you could theoretically just hit the little trash icon. It comes out of the sync queue. It doesn't add it to ILM, and you're good. It never will show up again, right? But we want to try to manage these as much as we can. When this list goes down to nothing present anymore, this button is going to go away, and this button will only show up if there's guest cards sitting in one site that we need to potentially look at bringing over into ILM. And so for many of the site teams that are on the call today, this might be something that we want to, that might take a little bit to, you go back to your communities and your desks and you start working on it. It might take a little bit of time initially, but once you've managed this, you shouldn't have to be managing a heck of a lot of guest cards moving forward. 1, 2 per day. If you see the button, click on it, manage it, move on. We're trying to keep this ILM system as calibrated with one site as we possibly can, but we don't want to create, this is not meant to create more work. This is meant to make your life easier, because if it exists in one site, the system's asking, should it exist in ILM as well? Does that help?
Yes, but I think everybody was like, oh, I got some work to do.
It's all right. It's a one-time thing. Judy, if there's any specific properties that are kind of,
I mean, I'm not going to call him. Yeah, I mean, if you come up over to Landmark at Patterson,
okay.
Original designation was.
I think when we converted, there's some. Yeah, Marcy, do you mind muting your phone? They just have a lot like from March, and Sherry and I were looking at it this morning, and I just don't know whether when we converted, it was, some of them just were cuckoos. But if you look at the very front ones, you click on the little eye, it tells you information, and it's from March.
Yeah. So if these are no longer,
like, so these are so old, I would just delete them.
So you certainly have the ability to do that within the UI itself. If we need to do a data fix, just to help this property get back on track, and we close them out on the ILM side, real page, just so you guys don't have to go through this. I don't know how many are on here, right?
There are a lot.
There's a lot. I'm happy to
Sherry
explore that as not.
Sherry says there's something.
But these are just new coming over. They weren't always a red arrow. There was a lot of them that were cleaned up, and I guess it was like the last update that happened, everyone got the red arrows. And
During the last update.
And the last ILM update,
Mhm.
yeah. Because they weren't always here, and then now we can't close them out, and that's the kind of question, is like, if you try to close them out, a server error, sync error comes up. So then it is, well, do we want to trash them? But if you're saying that it's an easy piece of traffic, how do we manage it when we're not able to sync it to ILM from PMS?
You'd have to create a new guest card probably.
Trash it, or like, I mean, I guess that's, take a screenshot of that and then manually.
So what you were saying, Michael, this is easy, maybe an easy piece that we can't do anything with. So we would just jot everything down and create a new guest card and work it that way, or?
For the ones that, when you say you can't do anything, you can't junk it either, or you're saying it is valid?
No, you can definitely junk it. You can definitely junk it. But if you go back to the red button and you're like, oh yeah, this one's really valid. So, you do choose, this is an agent, whoever, and then you say, yep, confirm, it's imported. And then we get that.
It's not just an error, guys. The ILM is even telling us this is a serious error. Serious error.
Seriously, it's serious.
It's seriously serious.
And this is across the board, is what I'm hearing.
In the sync queue.
Yes.
So we revived guest cards. And everyone's probably experienced it, right? We're not hiding behind anything. We'll be transparent. There was a release on July 7th that had a specific code error that we needed to pull out of the release. It went into the release, and for about 24 to 48 hours, you all that were using the system probably experienced a lot of server errors or pain trying to update or save guest cards during that time period. We rolled back the release. This appears to be a side effect of that. Let me take this down and give me 24 hours, Judy and team, to see if we can unlock these guest cards. I don't think we realized it impacted the sync queue as well. So give me 24 hours, and what we can do is we can look at your sync queues and see if we can unlock them from a guest card sync standpoint. If we did want to re-add them, I do not want you guys to have to go through that process of writing them down if they're still valid and recreating a guest card in the system. So we'll do everything we can. I can't make any promises, but we'll do everything we can to try to alleviate or circumvent that from having to be the option solution for these
Okay.
guys.
Yep, agreed.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. PM servers. Okay, cool. And I've taken that as an action item, and we'll go from there. But in general, I mean, from a sync perspective, right? Do we feel comfortable about like the actions that need to be taken place here on these?
Yeah, they're shaking their heads, yes.
All right, perfect.
It's the little blue button
Corner.
right here.
Yep. If it's not there, you're calibrated. The other blue button is a fun one for me, right? This is our search merge new functionality. How many of you feel good about how to search ILM? And I know I can't see any of you, but Judy will tattletale a lot for me.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
We feel good. Did you know you can search more than one person at one time?
No.
Yeah, that's what these little plus icons are for. So if I needed to search a guest card that had Miss Judy Olive and myself, I can search. Right now, it didn't find any guest card that had the last name. That's interesting. It had. I wonder what this guest card had.
No, you're in Patterson. You need to go back to Tamarack.
Oh, that's why. I was like, why does it not find me? That's weird. But we can search for it, right? So The interesting part about our search functionality is that we can search for multiple last names, we can search for multiple email addresses, we can search for multiple phone numbers at any given time. When we search, it's going to look for whatever keyword or specific text that you put in, and it's going to look for exact matches. Okay. For all the reasons we talked about at the very beginning of the call with caller IDs, if it's a caller ID name, but the guest card doesn't actually have Michael Mankoff in it yet, searching by Michael or searching by Mike or searching by MI or searching by man, none of that's going to pull back. So best case scenario, try to search for email address or phone number when you can. Okay. Guarantees a pullback that way. Or like we saw, there wasn't a Judy Olive, but there was an Oliveira here. It's going to look for, right now, there wasn't a Michael at this property, but I don't know if it's Mike or Michael or how we put him in. I can just search MI and it can pull back all the Michaels or anyone that begins with MI, right? So it's like, okay, I don't know if we have it as Mike Kane or Michael Kane, but I just search MI and we can pull it back and find it. So system's going to get, whatever you tell it to search, it'll search, and it searches all guest cards. So we do have like search bars up here at the top of your prospect board. It's limited to the date ranges you selected and the guest cards that are sitting on the prospect board. The same would be hold true with your leads board. Always recommend, if we're searching the system for guest cards, use the blue button and search this way. Okay.
Yep.
And that's also the spot where you would merge.
And this is where we can merge. So if we put Olive, if we look for Olive and we look for MI and we hit search, we can pull up Michael Kane. Where's that Oliveira one? Find it somewhere. We can pull up another one. As soon as we select more than one guest card, you'll have the ability to merge. We can click the green button. We're going to select which guest card is going to take over as the master, right? And then what it'll do is it'll tell me, what the desired move-in date is, what the lease term is going to be, why, what the status of that current guest card is in. So both of these actually happen to be closed. So if I merge them, should be opening one of them back up. Theoretically, you're not merging closed guest cards. You're merging, active guest cards. If there's any conflicts, right? So Michael Kane told me they wanted a 2-bedroom. Mike or Mick told me he wanted a 1. Which one's going to win? Is it the last updated? I can see the last updated at May 1st versus May 29th. If I select master wins and I'm selecting Mike, his bedroom type's going to win. If I select last updated wins, then the other guest card wins, right? So it's kind of just this conflict management type thing. You always have the ability to go and update it and change it once you do the merge. But the idea is all this is going to auto populate for you. I would click this button and now we've successfully merged the 2 guest cards together. Not going to do that because that's a live property and I'm sure those 2 don't belong together, but that's the way we would do that merge functionality. Any questions on that?
Nope, I think they're good.
I have some questions.
All right.
Brian has some. Hold on, we do.
Yep.
Just overall questions. Does ILM feed into BI?
Does ILM feed into BI in any way?
It's a good question. So similar to lead to lease, ILM lead manager only. I know you guys use leasing analytics, probably for a whole nother day there. Is lead manager does the lead management widget in BI does use ILM metrics. I will share with you that the data sources were a combination of OneSite and ILM historically. So they were using ILM for kind of top of funnel metrics and OneSite for bottom of funnel metrics for lease conversions. For a host of reasons, that wasn't a good idea to have 2 different data sources with BI specifically. So I know that's an opportunity that the teams are actively working on. So if you're not seeing tie-outs or reconciliation, please know that's kind of a known opportunity for us within RealPage, and that will be addressed, right? The hardest part is do you use OneSite where, okay, that's kind of our system of record, or do you use ILM that has all the most recent updated information? But certainly, as we kind of covered on today's call, the data within either system is really only as good as how effective the teams are at knowing what to do and trained on how to use it, right? And so that was an opportunity for us, and we've kind of pivoted and going a different way on that. But just please know that they will and they are connected, and that we do anticipate over the next few months to see that data be able to tie out very, very nicely between ILM and BI. There is a few reports on that topic that were added to ILM specifically for BI tieouts. You've probably recognized some of these. These are common in BI. Was the unmanaged guest card report and the needs management guest card report, as well as if we go to conversion logic, there's that follow-up report. Again,
So the tile in BI is called what? Lead management?
It's a widget. It's called the lead management widget associated with, it's in BI.
But so like on the one where you merged the two leads, and one said it was apartments.com and one said it was the website, and you said the apartments.com one didn't have some kind of number.
The one site number.
The website had the number. How do we know where the lead came from? Because I guess when you merge it, it's going to look like the website, not apartments.com.
So
that's that flow into BI that way, and then also the conversion ratios. Is that flowing into BI based on what the managers do? In other words, the one lady that showed as a lease sign, but she was still open or whatever it was, is that a conversion for the site, or is that like they never leased that apartment? How does that work?
Well, so you got to remember, right? It's based on the guest card status and what actually happened. But all of the PMS sync features is one, either to add to ILM guest cards that have gone through that online leasing process and created a guest card and or potentially applied. If we renting sight unseen probably happens more now than it did 10 years ago for certain, right? So people going in and just applying on your website without reaching out to the community, chances are they'll still probably reach out before they start getting moved in, right? But they don't necessarily have to have gone through that process if you have a good website, and we've let them self-service throughout the process already. So it's definitely predicated on status, but this entire functionality is built around the premise of duplicate management. So when you're talking about conversion ratios and things like that, this can only help those conversion ratios when we look at like a lead to tour or lead to lease conversion ratio, because now rather than artificially inflating that bottom lead bucket with two guest cards of the same person, we're not going to get two leases out of them, right? We're going to get one lease out of that individual. And so it's not changing the true conversion ratios, but it could actually, you could see a few bumps in your conversion ratio if your denominator is convoluted with a bunch of duplicates. Does that help?
So, but back to his question, in this scenario, you have apartments.com as the ad source. If one of them said property management website, and you merged it together and you chose to use ILM as the lead data point, and if that one had apartments.com, that then becomes the ad source.
Correct.
What if truly the website was truly where they went first? There's really no way in this data points here to understand, unless you're looking at, I guess, that date and timestamp. Is that truly when they were invoking that ad source?
Well, so that was the last updated date of the guest card, right? Not necessarily the like not necessarily the first time they reached out. But I'm trying to think of a scenario. I'm trying to play devil's advocate to myself. I honestly cannot think of a scenario where using a self-reported advertising source would be better than using the technology that we have with ILM.
Yeah, I think that's the key is, this is saying that they touched two different pieces of ad source. We just want to make sure that we're not giving the false representation that it was apartments.com when truly the very first ad source was the property website. So we know how to spend the marketing dollars.
Yep. I understand that. So the play devil's advocate on that logic for a minute, right? So for like the property management system value that's going to be in here for 95% of your guest cards is coming from online leasing. And it's coming from online leasing from a self-reported field. Like the prospect is just going to go down and select in a drop down the advertising source that they found you on, right? Now, for all intents and purposes, if I'm putting myself in their shoes, I went to apartments.com, I found the property, I clicked the link to go through to the property website, and then I went online leasing. I went through the online leasing experience. Probably going to put, oh yeah, I found you on the property website, right? That's where I'm at. But I came from apartments.com. Now, some people might say that. In this case, Maya probably did say she went from apartments.com, and that's where she found us first because the ad source matches. From a technology perspective, she called or emailed. The very first source she touched was what was captured in ILM. She called from apartments.com or emailed us from apartments.com first, right? So we want to, and then an ILM technology is capturing that. That wasn't self-reported field. She physically did that action in ILM. And that's why when I say, let's use the ILM value as much as possible, it's technology captured, meaning it actually happened versus self-reported. And ILM always looks at originating ad source. So I would say that it'd be prudent to use the ILM ad source almost every single time. And if we have additional questions or thoughts on, I mean, I'm definitely welcome to have the conversation. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here, but that would be my thought process anyways.
Did you have another question, Brian?
I just think in that scenario, there wasn't, I guess, that prospect ID, so they couldn't have chosen IL, right? It was, or he said it was.
Because they went straight to online leasing. They never even came in through the ILM side of the fence. So it was 100% self-reporting. If the ILM side was empty, is what you're saying, Brian?
No, it showed apartment stock. It showed everything here except it didn't have this number for some reason. Only this side had the number. So
okay. So you're saying, and I think it was back in Tamarack is where you found it, where the ILM side had everything but the ad source. So
this,
I guess those are the
yeah, so that's where I'm like, okay, it seems weird.
online leasings will be under the PMS as a sync issue.
But what if I don't have the sync thing, but it's not pulling online leasing prospects? Like there's no sync, but Jay and Christopher created an online leasing portal, but it's not.
Yeah.
Doesn't that take 24 hours to sync?
So which property are you in?
Landmark Marshall Broad.
Can you go to Landmark Marshall Broad real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Brian's question, I'm about to answer it though. So Jalen does not have a one site ID because Jalen is at this property is sitting in our in progress or in our leads board. Okay. So that if I looked at Jalen's guest card history here, the very first thing that we have is they sent us an email from apartments.com on July 26th. And I physically have that email and it was sent from apartments.com to our tracker, right? So I know on July 26th that Jalen emailed us from apartments.com. Okay. Now, and then I can go find the leads board. I can go find her on the leads board too. Right. Pull up her guest card here. Here it is, right? So that physically happened. Now, for one reason or another, her guest card made it into one site, but not from ILM. It made it into one site in another way. And it was self-reported that she selected property website. Okay. In this instance, I can validate the fact that she emailed us from apartments.com. She probably was on our property website, but that's a self-reported field. When I merge these two together, this is still a lead status, meaning it never merged to one site. So it's going to say, hey, I'm not going to create a duplicate in one site. I'm just going to reuse the one site ID that's already there. but I'm going to supplement the one site guest card with one, I'm going to fix the ad source. I'm going to add all the secondary information, right? Because there's a different last name for Jazz here for whatever reason. And it's going to, some of that communication events that I've already done, that Taylor's already been doing with this individual about texting is automatically going to sync over as well. So that's the difference between these two scenarios. It's not saying this value, even though it's already in one site and this one isn't, it's not saying this value is any more accurate than this one, but it's just the different stages of this guest card. Does that help?
Yeah.
Did this not land there? You said it didn't land in.
Do we need to answer her question first? Okay.
What's Olivia's situation?
If we were to click manage, if we were to click merge of these two, and I don't have the privileges to do it as an admin, this would, Taylor would have to do this, or Cherie. But if you were to click merge these two together, then it would pull the guest card onto my prospect board. Right now, this guest card is sitting on my leads board.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if it was truly
Right.
apartments.com or whoever.
Who is being
lead, that's what it gets
accredited to.
credited to, because at the end of the year, when we look at BI for leads and things of that nature, for how we spend our advertising.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the majority of the time, they're gonna end up on the website to actually do all the.
Online leasing stuff, right? Can you hop to Marshall Broad?
Of course I can.
It's landmark at Marshall Broad.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was the question, Olivia?
So someone like went to the online, so our website and then created like an online leasing portal account. So they quoted themselves, everything like that. So it shows up in one site under online leasing responsive activity, but that doesn't pull to ILM. So I'm having to check both and take that information and put it into ILM to contact them. So for instance, like.
So they went straight to apply.
So yeah, they went
And so it shows up in the online responsiveness or widget within leasing and rents, but it doesn't push backwards into ILM.
Mhm.
But they didn't put money on it.
They just created an account and then quoted themselves.
I feel like they sync 24 hours later.
One's from,
You want real time.
So like in,
Yeah, so one
they don't have a
was the
sync issue. They
30th.
don't have the little blue button at the bottom.
Mm.
But if you were to search for this person,
Grace.
Grace,
Grace.
Grace is the. What's her last name?
Horvath, Horvath.
So she's not here, right?
No.
Okay. Do you have a contact information for her, Grace?
Yeah. So.
Could this be the situation that we were talking about, but the auditing, Michael, that it's the leads are being pushed to leasing and rents and not ILM? So that's the direct link situation?
It's one that we can look at. I know this property is definitely one is one of the few that we do have to look at. It would be a little premature for me to say much, but certainly, if the team wanted to send us like in a specific example, I definitely will make sure we can look into it. From what I heard, my understanding is that it should have synced back.
Okay.
And so if that's not happening, we can look into that.
Okay.
Who do you want the contact?
You can just email it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, email it to me directly. I don't want you to feel like you have to put a support ticket or anything like that. Like this is something, I mean, please know this entire day is around making sure everyone feels good, right? We're set up, we feel good about ILM, we know what the responsibilities are. Again, ILM and the product is moving very quickly. We're innovating, trying to make things better for you all.
Email Michael directly, but if you'll email
Okay.
Sherry and I, and we'll funnel it through.
That
to
works.
Michael, just so we keep track of it.
Either way, that works, and we can do that. So let's do it. Let's take it that route.
Yep.
Perfect.
I just have one more. Sorry, guys, I can't.
One more question.
Can you see, I think you went through this when you went down to activity, but you can see like if Candace is working on a lead or Taylor's working on a lead, can I go into that same lead and I'll be able to see the inbound and outbound emails, conversations?
You can. And so that's a great question. And it brings up this whole concept of shared responsibility, right? And I'm sure that, there's team environments are oftentimes the most successful. And at the end of the day, when you think about it, in lead to lease, if someone had to take the day off, right, or someone was on vacation, those leads that they were working either didn't get progressed, or they got reassigned, or they kind of just fizzled out, right? Unless they were really adamant as a prospect. We wanted to create a system that was really focused on optimizing that consumer experience. We know that a lot of in a world full of choice right now, how does Landmark differentiate itself other than the amazing properties and the amazing staff that you guys have? How do you create a great experience for your potential residents, right? We want to get off on a good foot. And so not having to be redundant, or not having to log into a colleague's email address just to see communication history or respond to their prospects that are reaching out to them directly. If we do all the communication in ILM, we can keep all the communication in ILM. This is Tia. I'm going to pick some names here. So Tia and Olivia. So this is Tia's guest card, but Tia's out for the day. But, this individual reached out. No worries. We can see, what was an email. This one actually happened to be sent today. So team's on top of it. Good work. But if we got an inbound email and we needed to see it and respond, the first thing is if I do not reassign this into my name, what can happen is I can make it look like, if I wanted to, I can make it look like Tia's responding to them, right? I'm a good partner. I'm a good team member. This is still going to stay in Tia's name. She's back tomorrow. Right? I can send a communication out, make sure that we're working this as a team. At the end of the day, none the different. If there's a reason why, I need to assume responsibility of this long term, we do the agent assignment change, like I showed you earlier, and we move on, right? Both scenarios can be accounted for in ILM. Everything is notated at the bottom in the guest card history, so we can see when that happens, and it's very clear and evident, and we can talk through the why. But the idea is we're not missing a beat with communication, right? All of our communication is here. We can see what was sent. We can see when it was delivered. We can see what was received inbound. The same holds true for phone calls, SMS, texts, as well as chat, right? So you have that communication ability to where we're not having to be redundant to a prospect, but rather we're picking it up and it's a seamless conversation, and everybody has access to that communication history. So we can try to work towards optimizing that customer experience.
So in that communication chain, if you have an office of 2 to 3 people, currently you're not unable to determine who made that last contact, other than, I think it says it on the front of the guest card, right?
So
or in that conversation, it's like, the manager looks at it and says, well, who was the last one that emailed? I guess
who
you have to delve
actually sent this email? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Right. So that is so it's a fair point, and it's a question that we're actually looking at. Do we want to make the notes a little more robust to say who did it? There is some value into that. Holistically, what I won't say the assumption is whoever's owning responsibility of the guest card is who, at least I've seen other clients say, is assumed to have been doing the communication. Now, if someone else did it on behalf of Tia, but we didn't reassign the name, and that's important to capture that, you can always, as you place the communication, within either if it's within the comment section, or just the notes of the guest card in itself, we can say, I called what's the name of this guest? I called Adira today because Tia was out, right? And that will capture it. Comments do sync over to one site, so just know that. The one thing I will share, I'm gonna find my guest card and I'll share you. Oh, we're not in my thing anymore. I'll put, am I okay to put a test comment on this guest card?
Yeah.
Okay, test comment. And we can save guest card. When we do that here, I've had a lot of people say, oh, here's only the comment section, just says test comment. So the system will, to a certain character limit, show you the last comment in this comments bar, but that is not all the comments associated with the guest card. Please know all the previous other comments are organized down here. So just wanted to share with you and show you that that's not the only comment on the guest card, but rather it's just the most recent one that's showing there.
Good information.
We're getting close to time, but how are we feeling? Learn something today? Any final questions for me? If there's additional questions that come up, please, route those through Landmark leadership, and we'll definitely make sure we can address them after this. But this has been fun, everyone.
Yeah, we have one more really quick question.
Yeah, bring it. We got some time. Let's do it.
On the main page.
The snapshot?
Yeah, this page you start off with every morning. Under the, I forget what it's called. Can you bring yours up?
Needs attention.
Average contacts per prospect.
Yep.
Mine's in the red. And I mean, we've been emailing them and calling them and stuff, so I don't understand.
How do you move the needle from red to green under average contacts per prospect?
Gotcha.
Well, number one, if you remember, Michael said that how are you reaching back out to, and sorry, Michael, I'm jumping in.
No, go for it.
If you are working a lead, but you pick up your desk phone and dial their phone number, it's never going to record.
Right.
So you have to call through
that
right.
number.
Okay.
Trying to remember that. And then the emails. I mean, some of them we sent 9 emails, but I don't understand why it's not counting. Is it not the leads? It's just the prospects that it's counting on?
So how do you move the needle, Michael?
Yeah. So it only counts for prospects, 1, right? So if you're sending a bunch of traffic to leads, that's great, or a bunch of communication to leads, that's great. But if you're not promoting those leads to prospects and then still reaching out to them when they're prospects, you're not necessarily going to get credit for it. Again, you got to make sure you're reaching out and using communication channels through ILM. The other thing is this looking at guest cards in a time period. So 2 things can happen that could skew this in a negative light and a positive light. One thing is if you're getting caught up because you had a bunch of old leads that you never responded to and you finally are responding to them, you're gonna see your average go down, even though you're doing the right thing. And we're aware of that, and leadership's aware of that within Landmark. But what happens is you're now creating a guest card that was not included in the calculation. And let's say you're clearing out and you're responding to a bunch of leads that you accidentally missed from 2 weeks ago. You respond to all those leads, you're doing the right thing. We're not trying to discourage you from doing them, but it's going to actually inflate this number up, right? Because now it's taking like those 2 weeks, showing 2 weeks to account from a response time. Okay. The other thing is I've seen a lot of people go try to do this. They go down to 1 week, and this board will filter down to 1 week. And now we saw Marshall Broad go from 4 over 4 to now down to 2. Does anyone want to guess why?
Less people.
Less people, less
people. But you got to think about the time frame. These are guest cards that were created in the last week. So how many times do we expect to follow up with them in a week, right? I don't know. You tell me. But 2 seems about right. And so when we're looking at the time horizon that we've given, it's how many guest cards are prospects that how many times on average have we reached out to them in the last week, right? When you're looking at that kind of narrow focus, you're gonna see what you would expect to see is that number to decrease, right? So a 28-day or 4-week, which is our default time frame, oftentimes representative of what the consumer life cycle or buying behavior is, right? Now, if you feel your consumer buying behavior is different, meaning it takes us 45 days to convert leads on average, or 60 days. I don't think that's the case, but sometimes it could be based on, the market you're in and otherwise. You maybe want to even change this view, or when you run these metrics, to be representative of a full consumer buying cycle. To improve this metric, it's got to be a prospect. You got to be reaching out. Choose all different types of communication, not a prerequisite, but oftentimes the best customer experience. And make sure you're doing it for all your prospects. So,
And you're going to turn on the aggressive prospect item. So that if you're working a
aggressive prospect,
close it, and you've changed information, it's now going to ask you, do you want to make this a prospect? So then that'll automatically move it for you. And now you're working a prospect, not a lead.
Yeah.
Will that be turned on credit? Like when she converts into a prospect, is she gonna get credit for all the follow-up she did prior?
Or do we start it all over again?
Well, if it comes into the lead board and you reach out and go, hey, you do the text, you send them a quick first follow-up email or first communication, and then you save it as a prospect, it's now going to be over in your follow-ups, and then it's going to start tracking it from there.
It just converts into prospect.
So even if you have nothing.
I mean, you're trying to measure the intent. I mean, you're measuring the intent. If it's someone that's like, I need a 2-bedroom and I need it, today, and you don't have any 2-bedrooms, then it's going to be hard to serve their intent, their need. So, yeah.
Once you mark them as stored,
Yeah.
are we still getting?
you guys got it. And if there's
Yeah.
additional questions, please feel free to send it our way. I'm happy to continue the conversation.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to have lunch here, and we'll probably continue the conversation. So I'll send you a follow-up if anything pops up.
I think that sounds great. I thank you everyone for the questions. Great group you got here. Love working with Landmark and team. Certainly hope you guys enjoy using ILM Lead Manager. We're here to help and support you from a RealPage perspective. You got Lauren Danzer, you got myself, but a whole host of RealPage support and individuals behind you all and behind these products. And so again, just want to thank you for the partnership. Good luck. Enjoy your lunch. Might be there next week to get my pizza shooting if I'm going to be watching. But no, I really want to just thank everyone for the conversations today. Very engaged group. Enjoy, and always reach out if you need anything.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.